We are going to cover Section 1 of Chapter 14, Human Chromosomes. Our key questions for this section: what is a karyotype? What patterns of inheritance do human traits follow? How can pedigrees be used to analyze human inheritance? Section 1, Karyotypes. Our first definition is genome. A genome is an entire set of genetic information that an organism carries in its DNA. Number 2, karyotypes. A karyotype is a micrograph of the complete diploid set of chromosomes grouped together in pairs, arranged in order of decreasing size. Here we see a picture of a human karyotype. Notice that there are a total of 46 chromosomes in a typical human cell, or 23 pairs. The very last set of chromosomes on this karyotype are called the sex chromosomes. Notice you see an X and a Y. Sex chromosomes are one of two chromosomes that determines an individual's sex. Humans contain two sex chromosomes. Females have an XX and males have an XY. What is the ratio that males and females are likely to be born? We're going to take a look at this Punnett square here. We have the female or mom on the top with an X and an X. The father and the male on the side of the Punnett square with an X and Y. When we fill in the Punnett square, we have two offspring that are male, or that have the possibility of being a male, and two that have the possibility of being a female. So there's always a 50% chance of being a male or a 50% chance of being a female. Question number 9, which parent determines the gender of a baby? Mothers, because their chromosomes are X and X, only have an X to carry down to either offspring. Fathers either pass on an X and the offspring is a female, or pass on a Y and the offspring is a male. So fathers, depending on which gene they pass on, determine the gender of a baby. Autosomes. Going back to our picture of the karyotype, autosomes are all the chromosomes that are not sex chromosomes. Humans have a total of 44 autosomes, or 22 pairs. All right, transmission of human traits. Human genes follow the same Mendelian patterns of inheritance as the genes of other organisms. Number 2, dominant and recessive alleles. Many human traits follow a pattern of simple dominance. Examples of dominant and recessive alleles are the MC1R gene. The MC1R gene helps determine skin and hair color. Some of MC1R's recessive alleles produce red hair. An individual with red hair usually has two of these recessive alleles. These are following Mendel's rules for dominance. Another example is the Rh factor. The Rh factor is what determines the positive and negative on our blood type, such as A positive or A negative. If it's positive, that is the dominant form of the allele, and if it is negative, that is the recessive form of the allele. An individual would need to have two recessive forms of the allele to be negative. Number 3, codominant and multiple alleles. The alleles for many human genes display codominant inheritance. We talked about codominance in a previous chapter, and it is when both alleles are shown equally. The example that we referred to often was if we had a black feathered chicken crossed with a white feathered chicken. The offspring would be a black and white feathered chicken. An example for humans is the ABO blood type. If we had a parent that was type A and the other parent was type B, the offspring could show codominance by possibly having type AB blood, both being present. ABO blood type is also an example of multiple alleles. Multiple alleles means that there are more than two alleles available. So when we were talking about dominant and recessive with the Rh factor, there were only two possibilities, positive or negative. But traits that are multiple alleles, then there are more than two possibilities. And with our blood type, we can get an allele for A, an allele for B, or an allele for O types of blood. Sex-linked inheritance. Because the X and Y chromosomes determine sex, the genes located on them show a pattern of inheritance called sex linkage. A sex-linked gene is a gene that is located on a sex chromosome. An example is color blindness. Color blindness is a recessive trait that is only seen on the X chromosome. I'm going to flip over here to an example of color blindness. We're going to work on answering the two questions here. Who gets it more often, males or females? And who did you get it from, if you're a boy or if you're a girl? Here I have a Punnett square drawn in. First, we're going to write down all the possibilities for males. So remembering that males are X, Y, I'm going to use a superscript with the letter B, capital B, for the dominant form of the trait, and a lowercase b for the recessive form of the trait. And remember, the trait we're talking about here is color blindness. We already said in our notes that color blindness is recessive and that it only shows up on the X chromosome, which is why I did not write anything over here on the Y's, because it only travels on an X chromosome. So I can take those away. All right, if we take a look at this first boy here, here's boy number 1. He has a capital B. Okay, my question is, would this boy be colorblind? And the answer to that would be no. Because colorblindness is a recessive form of the trait, I would need the recessive form of the allele. And capital B represents the dominant form. So, no, he is not colorblind. When I look at boy number 2 here, we're looking at this lowercase b. And because we did say color blindness is recessive and he has the recessive form of the trait, yes, he would be colorblind. All right. And then to go back and ask the question, who did he get it from? Did he get this color blindness trait from mom or did he get it from dad? When we look back over here at the Punnett square, here's our boys again. Okay, notice that boys get their X chromosome from mom because they have to get the Y chromosomes from dad. So if a boy is colorblind and color blindness only travels on the X chromosome, they would get that from mom. All right, let's take a look at females now. Our options for females. Female number 1 would have a capital B. And remember, females are 2 X chromosomes, so they would show color blindness on both of those X chromosomes. Option number 2 and option number 3. Okay, so let's work through these and see which ones would be colorblind. The first girl has 2 capital B's showing 2 dominant forms of the trait. She would not be colorblind because we said colorblindness is recessive. Girl number 2 has a capital a dominant form, with a capital B, and a recessive allele with a lowercase b. Okay, because it is a recessive form of the trait, if there's a dominant form seen there with this capital B, the recessive form is being hidden. So no, girl number 2 would not be colorblind. Girl number 3 has 2 forms of the recessive form of the trait, so 2 lowercase b's, and so therefore, yes, she would be colorblind. Girl number 2, we asked the question then, who did you get your color blindness from? And because she has to get a recessive form on both X's, she gets an X from mom and an X from dad. Therefore, both mom and dad would have to pass on the trait if a girl is colorblind. Next, we're going to answer the question, who gets it more often, males or females? Boys only need one recessive form of the trait to be colorblind and only have it come from mom. Girls need 2 forms of the recessive trait, one coming from mom and one coming from dad. So it makes it a lot harder and less likely for girls to be colorblind. Males actually get it more often. 1 in 12 boys are colorblind, whereas 1 in 200 females are colorblind. All right, X chromosome inactivation. In females, because females have 2 X's, most of the genes in one of the X chromosomes are randomly switched off. So they're coding for genes, but only one of them can be seen at a time. So the information on the other gene turns off. These regions are known as bar bodies. In cats, which are good examples, a gene that controls the color of coat spots is located on the X chromosome. One X chromosome may have an allele for orange spots, and the other chromosome may have an allele for black spots. So what you end up seeing is orange spots in some parts of the body, while the black spots are being turned off, and then black spots in the other parts of the body, while the other X chromosome for orange spots is turned off. Since male cats have just one X chromosome, they can have spots of only one color. Therefore, if the cat's fur has 3 colors, white with orange and black spots, you can almost be certain that that cat is female. These types of cats are called calico cats or tricolored cats. Human pedigrees. A pedigree is a chart that shows the presence or absence of a trait according to the relationships within a family across several generations. Here we're going to look at an example of hemophilia. When you're looking at females, they are represented with a circle, such as Queen Victoria. Males are represented with a square, such as Prince Albert. When there's a horizontal line going across between Queen Victoria and Prince Albert, they have been married. When there is a vertical line going down from them, such as the one leading to Alice, that means that Alice is their daughter. If the shape is completely colored in, and in this example it's colored in red, that means that they have the trait. In this example, we're looking at hemophilia. If it is halfway colored in, that means that they are a carrier of the trait. And if it is completely white or left open, that means that, for this example, they have normal blood. Hemophilia is a genetic condition that is carried by the X chromosome. It is one of several genetic conditions that has afflicted members of Europe's royal families. You can gain lots of information from a pedigree, such as if the trait is dominant or recessive, autosomal, or sex-linked. And that wraps up section 1 of chapter 14.